Kia ora, good evening. Proud but humbled after being voted in as Invercargill's first female MP in history. That's Sarah Dowie's reaction to her landslide victory on what she describes as a surreal Saturday night. I caught up with the newly elected MP before she departed for Parliament today.
Yeah, it was a fantastic victory, but obviously we took nothing for granted during this campaign. We made sure that we got out there and did the work and look, thrilled with the result.
You're off to Wellington today, the first of many, many trips to come. What are your expectations when you get into the backbench?
Well, gosh, we're just running inductions at the moment, so I really just want to understand the system so that, you know, if I can work the system, then I know, hopefully, how to get some wins across the line.
As far as wins across the line, what sort of things will you be working towards in your initial term?
Well, the first thing I've promised to look into is obviously the free healthcare and prescriptions for children under 6 moving to 13 now that we're in government. So, I mean, I need to look into that to understand why it's an opt-in, opt-out process and try and get some movement perhaps on that so that we can get more doctors' surgeries down there buying into the scheme.
Anything else that's on a local level, Sarah?
Well, obviously Penny Simmons is really passionate about SIT and she would love the SIT to be known as a university. So I've already been chatting with Stephen Joyce about that. But look, hey, we've got a long road to go. We've got to understand the system and then we've got to be good at our craft and then get stuck in for those wins across the line.
Have you had a call from the Prime Minister?
No, actually, but I had a call from the Deputy Prime Minister and he was thrilled for me and I'm looking forward to seeing him.
At what stage did you decide that you wanted to stand for government?
Well, it's actually been a gradual process. There was no sort of one epiphany. I always talk about the first time I was introduced to a communist system when I was 15 and I was a dancer. Went over to the Soviet Union and experienced this left-wing culture. Couldn't understand why these fantastic people over there had absolutely nothing. Came back home, researched our system, understood that we were running a more capitalist society, and then just slowly built from there. Did law at university, did a few polls papers, and ended up going to the Department of Conservation, and then after I left there, moving into the Blue Greens, which is the environmental arm of the National Party, and that sort of sparked my interest in more so in politics, and I sort of had a journey from there moving into more mainstream policy and then obviously being accepted into Candidates College.
Has there been a driver to see change with any particular aspect of the way that the country's governed?
Well, I think not necessarily on a policy-based level, but definitely on a more strategic level. I think there definitely is a place for centre to centre-right people to be in politics with that more moderate view, and certainly mums and younger people in politics. We've got a more diverse view, and I think that voice needs to be heard.
Certainly in Invercargill over the weekend, the 3 top polling candidates, obviously all women. Do you think that we're going to see more of this workforce coming through?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a positive thing. There is a place for women in politics, and I guess the other thing is that we not only just bring a logical view, but we've got a bit of emotion with us, and that's a positive. And that softer side needs to be heard in politics.
Labor candidate Leslie Soper says the national win was very disappointing and says there was a strong mood for change during canvassing. Ms Soper has announced she won't stand again for nationwide politics as an MP and is now taking time to reflect. She says John Key's popularity won the race, but is adamant David Cunliffe has what it takes to be Prime Minister.
The result this time is very much a reflection of John Key's popularity. The local candidate was unknown for national, but the John Key vote was obviously a very strong one.
When you look at it in the other way, then perhaps David Cunliffe not perhaps the strength of the leader that the nation's looking for.
David Cunliffe is a great leader and I'm a well-known supporter of David's. I think people need to remember that Helen Clark lost the 1996 election and went on to a massive victory in 1999. David is a great leader. He's got the goods.
What do you think perhaps the strengths were with National aside from John Key himself?
I don't think that there were any particular strengths. They did not have particularly good policies. They really were campaigning on nothing new as far as initiatives or ideas went. They were solely campaigning on the popularity of John Key. To me, the national campaign was sadly very much a American presidential campaign, and I do not like that style of politics entering New Zealand. It's a little bit worrying, and I think is one of the reasons why there has been a drop-off in voting in New Zealand, and that's something that vastly worries me for the sake of democracy. I think if we get less than an 80% turnout, which of course is what we have had the last several elections, that we've actually had a disaster.
What about with the Labour Party? What were the signs of weaknesses there, do you think, if any?
I think that we had brilliant policies and that we had a very, very good team. It was a reflection of the John Key popularity. If
Labour had more of a charismatic or popular leader, do you think it may have been a closer race?
Next election, 2017, I see David Cunliffe leading Labour to victory with very good policies.
Meanwhile, waiting with bated breath is Invercargill's New Zealand First candidate Ria Bond, who could potentially still be winging her way to Wellington, but won't know until the special votes are counted.
It was such a slim gap there, so there is the special votes that are coming in, so I'm sort of sitting here thinking, I wonder how we're going to go with the party vote of those, so looking forward to seeing those results.
So just tell us about the numbers. How many votes do you need from the special votes in order to cross that line?
Okay, I'm off the top of my head, I'm thinking somewhere between 200 to 300. So, it's like sitting on a cliff, really. It is a cliffhanger.
And when do we expect to know the results finally?
Okay, I expect, or I've read that we should know by the 4th of October. So I'm hoping that there's a New Zealand First votes for the special votes of actually get me in there. A lot of our new list MPs are actually in Parliament now with an induction. So if I get through on that list, it's first flight out to Wellington to get that induction process performed with me. I would be very proud to represent this electorate. You know, this is where I brought my feet up, and I believe in this electorate, and I believe that I've got the skills and the knowledge to actually help grow it.
Still to come, has the polling booth had its day, plus aerobics, hip-hop and sustainable living in the south. Welcome back. With the general election now over, we hit the streets to ask people if they voted, if they were happy with the results and whether it's time to move with technology.
Yes. And are you happy with the outcome?
Yes.
What makes you happy about the outcome?
I think at the end of the day we need to have trust in who we're voting for, so yeah.
And do you think some form of electronic voting would be a better method?
Oh, no, stick to the way it goes.
Yes, it did.
And what do you think of the outcome?
I think it's quite divisive, really. I would have thought the left would have come through with a little bit more support. Yeah, it's quite interesting, really, how the overall result came through.
And are you happy that National won?
I am and I aren't. I think that National has a very right-wing agenda. It would be nice to see the Labour sort of agenda come through a little bit more strongly.
Yes.
And are you happy with the outcome?
No.
Why is that?
Because that's not who I voted for. I don't support what he stands for.
Do you think that some form of electronic voting would be a better method?
I suppose so, yes.
Did I vote? Yes, I did.
And are you happy with the outcome?
Yes.
What makes you so happy about the outcome?
Because I think it brings more stability, and we know where we've been and we kind of know where we're going.
Do you think some form of electronic voting would be a better method?
No, I don't.
And why is that?
Because I have children who didn't vote, and I doubt that if you made it easy they would change their minds. They just didn't vote because they didn't want to.
It would be good, but there's some problems with it, of course.
Like what problems?
People hacking into it. You know.
The Department of Conservation is condemning the shooting of a New Zealand fur seal found on Stewart Island last week. The dead seal was found on Smoky Beach with a single hole in its side, which suggested it had been shot with a rifle. It's the third seal shooting since May, and DOC investigations have failed to identify any culprits. DOC is asking anyone with information on this or any other seal attacks to contact the local DOC office or the police. Figures released by ANZ Research show job advertising has flattened after a higher level of advertising earlier in the year. Research shows that nationally, internet and newspaper job advertising rose 1.4% in August, a partial bounce back from a 2.4% fall in July. While total job ads were almost 12% higher than last August, they're 1.9% lower than April peak, showing a loss of momentum. Internet job ads rose just 1% in August, while newspaper ads gained 4.5% after a 6.7% fall in July. ANZ says newspaper-based job advertising has been in a long-term decline as internet-based services increase their market share. International travel and migration figures show an increase in Kiwis departing and visitors arriving in New Zealand. The number of Kiwis who departed on overseas trips in the August 2014 year increased by 2% from August 2013, while visitors entering the country increased by 5%. Around half of all trips by Kiwis were made to Australia, while the biggest increase of arrivals to New Zealand were from Australia, the United States, China, Germany and Singapore. Migrant arrivals in the country reached a new high of 103,900 in the year August 2014. Statistics New Zealand said the increase in arrivals was led by more students arriving, particularly from India, and more New Zealand citizens arriving from Australia. Those interested in learning more about sustainable living and environmentally friendly practices had plenty of valuable information on offer yesterday. The Invercargill Eco Festival was underway at the Invercargill Workingmen's Club, and those who attended learned how they can make eco changes in their lives. Invercargill Transition Towns teamed up with the Invercargill Environment Centre and South Coast Environment Centre this year to organise the festival, which had stalls, talks and workshops. There to share their wisdom as part of the Global Day of Action event, a range of eco-affiliated groups including Forest and Bird, Rural Women and Waste Busters made up the 30 stalls on display.
All sorts of energy saving devices, plants, ways to clean your house environmentally friendly, grafting with plants, talks by people using solar energy, energy efficiency.
Yeah, no, we've got a big range of groups represented here today. There's some groups who focus on food and eating healthy organics. We've got groups that focus on animal rights, like the vegan groups and the greyhound rescue group, and we've got workshops and talks on a big range of topics like pruning fruit trees, grafting. We tried to make it as practical as possible, so instead of the idea that sustainability is something that you have to tackle politically, we want them to come away with a skill, so we've got workshops and talks where they can learn something, and but also making connections.
There was plenty of energy, jumping and pumping at the Civic Theatre over the weekend as hundreds of competitors battled it out on stage in the National Schools Aerobics and Hip Hop Championships. It's the 19th National Championships, took place over 2 days with more than 150 entries competing in aerobics and hip hop. Athletes from years 4 to 13 showed their fitness and creative prowess. Judges were looking for technical accuracy of movement, correct body position and stage presentation in the aerobics competition, as well as musicology and intensity of routines. While hip-hop competitors were judged on dance styles used, combinations, formation changes, patterns and intensity. All those competing had previously qualified at regional competitions, and while the majority of athletes were from secondary level, Southland was well represented by primary school competitors. And that's all from us this Monday. Stay with us for sport along after the weather next. From the news team, good night.